Hello everyone, I'm Aaron, the manager of Cleethorpes Dragons in GBR Division 2, and today I'm going to talk about maximising training on a small number of players. This video is not going to be about training a whole squad of youths into world class players, it's simply going to be about getting to grasps with the theory of the best possible training, which although may not always be practical, the underlying concepts from this will be relied upon heavily in my next video, which will be about training squads of players from 17-year-olds into world class players. Firstly, I'll say that I definitely don't know everything, and I'm sure if you can speak German there'll be much better YouTube videos out there that can probably give you much better advice. That being said, I have taken a squad of non-diligent 17-year-olds, which in total cost me less than 130 million, which is basically nothing in this game, and most of them will be hitting 9.8s in the next couple of seasons, as those of you who saw my last videos will have seen. So I feel my training has worked out pretty well. Hope some people are going to benefit from this video. I will talk about everything from the point of view of a team that is at the end of the game. They have all the infrastructure etc. in place. If this isn't you, I'm sure you can apply the concepts to your own team. Right, so let's talk about the assistant coach first. Now obviously, as far as pure training is concerned, we need a qualification 100, experience 100 assistant coach. If you don't have this, this is the most important member of staff, and you must sell your soul to get it. I pay 45k a week for mine, but if I had to pay 250k, or I had to pay 450, I would, because you simply cannot afford to go out without it. It's 100% mandatory. Motivation is often overlooked with staff members as well, but it is vitally important, especially on this member of staff. Assuming you have a qualification 100 and experience 100 assistant coach, every time he loses about 3 points of motivation, he's losing approximately 2 points of qualification as well. So every point in motivation that you lose is losing you training directly, so this should never be dropping below 95. Realistically, I wouldn't let mine drop below 97 or 98. As I've said, money is not so much an issue in this game, but training is very limited, so you can't be affording to lose out and worrying about what you're paying your assistant coach. Now, I know we have Goal United next staff at the moment, which will be keeping our motivation at 100 in the meantime, but I thought I would mention it because this is only temporary, and no doubt people are going to forget how important motivation is when we lose that permanent 100 that we have at the moment. So, right. Level 5 training centre, an absolute obvious must. The plus 10% training upgrades for defending, playmaking, scoring and tackling are absolutely huge, and are absolute musts, utterly non-negotiable. If you have no intention of trying to get these, then the other point in this guide are going to be fairly redundant, because you're going to lose out on so much training from not having those, then it's not really going to be that much of a benefit for you. Even non-star buyers don't really have a reason not to be able to afford this nowadays. You can make a lot of stars just by playing the goal wall correctly, and I'll probably do a video about this at some point following my guide on the forums. And especially now you can do this up to 3 times a day with Top Manager. It's just mega easy stars. You can even pick up more stars now doing achievements across multiple teams that give cards to sell on the bazaar. Or even easier, starting from next season, you'll be able to do your season goals across multiple teams to give you stars. I mean, assuming you have 3 teams and you do the no players above 35 season goal on all of them, that's 7,500 stars, which is well over halfway to all your training upgrades for your main team for a year. So, yeah, anyone can get it. I would never bother with the actual goalkeeper training upgrade. I'll talk about that later on. I'll also discuss about other useful infrastructure and staff as well, but I'll talk about those when the reasons for having those comes up. So, finally onto the training page. Training cards, I'll come back to those in a minute. The 10 o'clock slot, this is just tactics. It doesn't affect your stat training at all, so we can pretty much just ignore that. If we go on to the 8 o'clock slot first, we have form, endurance, relaxation and talent training. Now, the thing about all of these is you can get all of these from using training cards. So you can't really use these if you want the best possible training when you have alternatives that can give you stat points. So basically replace all these four in your training schedule with training cards. They don't have to be rare. I've got by on uncommons for quite a long period of time. I've only got using all these rares because at the moment Goal United just seems to be chucking endless packs at me, and these are all locked to my account. So yeah, this leaves us with technique training and goalkeeper and form training. As you can see, I prefer technique training, and I'll go to why I don't know goalkeeper training next. So a couple of points about goalkeeper training. It only affects one player on the field, right? Technique training affects every player on the field, including the goalkeeper's goalkeeping skill. It may be a small amount, but the majority of things I'm going through on this guide are marginal gains, and it's going to be a marginal gain across your whole squad rather than just affecting one player, right? And that becomes even more redundant in my second point, when getting a good goalkeeper is not a problem that can be solved by money in the game. You can just buy yourself a good goalkeeper and that has that problem covered, or you can even just use scout cards or use your youth training facility and get one good enough in your youth team and just triple slot him to 21, and he has enough goalkeeping skills so he doesn't need goalkeeper training, and that way you don't need to leech that technique training away from the rest of your squad. So this is why I don't use the goalkeeper training upgrade, because I will never use goalkeeper training. I will always use either stars and get one from my youth facility, or just use the in-game money and just buy one off the transfer market and just keep the rest of my squad training as efficiently as they can. Right, I am going to talk a little bit about goalkeeper training, and I'm going to put a disclaimer here with this next bit because it is purely hypothetical and I have no evidence base for it, but I would share it anyway for those of you that really must feel like you must do goalkeeper training despite what I've said. So most people tend to go for this goalkeeper and form training slot in the 8 PM slot. Personally, I think I would try and go with the technique training still and go with the goalkeeper and tackling training slot. Now this is going to give you two little bits of goalkeeper training, and it will keep the technique training across all your little things. Obviously you're going to lose your little bit of training here, but it just seems like it will work better rather than having this ugly little form training here, which we know we can just replace with cards. So like I said, that is purely hypothetical, and if anyone would like to give it a go and let me know the results on how much goalkeeper training you get and how much it affects your other stats compared to doing the goalkeeper and form training, I would be very interesting to hear from the results from that. Right, the 4 main training slots now. As you all no doubt know, we all have 4 training slots with which we have to put our 4 different types of large block training throughout the day. We are not allowed to stack the same type of large block training, so at some point during the day we have to use our large block scoring, our large block playmaking, our large block tacking and a large block passing. We have no choice on that. The only choices we are really given in these slots is what goes with that large block training, what little secondary block we get, and at what time of day this training occurs. Now, for the smaller blocks, we won't be picking anything down this row. We won't be taking any endurance or form training because we can cover that with training cards, as we saw earlier. And we won't be taking any goalkeeper training because of the points I made a couple of minutes ago. Now, as you probably know, players get the best training on their primary stat for this position, right? So what we have here is winger training, and we are trying to give the best possible training to the players in that position. Obviously, if we are trying to promote the best training for our wingers, and we know this is by training their primary stat, we've just put as much passing training as possible into the training schedule. So we've got all the small passing blocks that we've been allowed, and there isn't a large and small passing block, so we've put tackling in for that instead. Now, the choice of what you pick for your small training block that you can't have as passing shouldn't be random. It's always going to be the strongest secondary stat of whatever your main position is. This is because, like players training their position's primary stat better, so we put as much training as we can get into that, they also train stronger secondary stats faster than they would stats that give very little for that position. Right? For a winger, this is fairly easy, as the other stats give a fairly even amount, so you can pick and choose what you want a little bit. But for a striker, they're going to get less training from tackling, a midfielder will get less training from passing, and a defender is going to get less training from shooting. So you're not going to choose these, as you'll be getting less training. Right, on to things that can interfere with training. Injuries are basically the bane of my time on Goal United. Time spent injured is obviously lost training, so we upgrade our turf. Now, too many managers don't bother, and historically I've argued against a lot of managers about the merits of it, although I think the majority are starting to agree now. It doesn't matter if you upgraded your turf and in your next match like 4 players got injured. It's all down to chance, and it says on the tin that it reduces the chance of injuries, so believe it or not, over a period of time that's probably what it will do. And if it's reducing the number of injuries, it's indirectly increasing training, so go for it. The same for a doctor and people's reluctance to have one on their staff. You may well have 2 full hills per season, but for a lot of seasons that won't be enough. No matter how careful you are, eventually your players will end up injured. Even using rehab cards every day, which you should obviously be doing when you have an injured player, a 30-day injury is still going to take 10 days to get down to bruised, or 6 to 7 days with a decent doctor and using the rehab cards as well. So 3 or 4 days training for paying 30k a week for a doctor is just like an absolute no-brainer. Right, next, energy. The amount of energy our players have increases the efficiency of our training, so obviously we need a top-class physiotherapist to recover that energy as much as possible, and we need a good fitness coach in addition to the stamina training cards we're going to use to keep the energy levels high so we lose less energy. And we need to play a lot of relaxation cards to keep that energy as high as possible so that we don't lose any training. As you can see here, with us having International Masters games at the moment, I am using relax cards 5 days a week, and just to keep those energy levels in tip-top shape. I mean, even little things you may not think about, playing practice and friendly matches at 50%, you probably still will not have 100 energy the following day. Now, I'm not saying go spamming energy cards or relaxation cards following 50% matches, because I don't do it. I'm just trying to promote awareness of all these marginal losses and gains that might be affecting your training that you're possibly not thinking about. Right, because energy levels affect training, it also determines the order in which it's best to do our training blocks throughout the day. As we lose energy from doing the training, the later on training blocks will become less efficient because we have less energy. So our first training block at 12 o'clock will always be the large training block of whatever primary position we are trying to train. So as we're trying to do the winger training in these positions, it's always going to be the passing, because that's the one that our wingers are going to get the most benefit from. Like I said earlier with wingers, all the other stats are roughly the same, so it's not as rigid as what's most efficient for the following 3 positions. However, with tackling, they have a clear tertiary stat which is much weaker than the others, which is scoring, so we'll put that last in the training schedule because defenders will get the least benefit from that, and these two are fairly even for a defender, so they can go pretty much either way round throughout the day. With playmaking for the midfielders, we'll always put the passing training at the end of the day, because that's the one that the midfielders are going to benefit for the least when we're focusing our training on the midfielder. And once again, the scoring and the tackling are fairly equal for the midfielder. And if we focus training on our strikers, then obviously we're going to have our scoring training first. We'll have our secondary training as playmaking or passing. Those two could quite easily go the other way around. If the passing training was up here, I would change this to passing as well. I'll cover that a bit more in my next video. And then obviously tackling is the weaker stat for a striker. He's going to get the least benefit from it, so we'll put that at the end of the day. Right, so I think I've covered quite a lot in quite a fairly short video. Babbled on quite a bit, but I hope the video helps a few people out at least. And good luck, and I'll see you on my next video. Goodbye.